Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Marketing and Mindset with Matt Miller. And today we got an episode that's all about marketing. I have a question. How many of you have ever asked the question to somebody, what do you do? Or maybe you've gotten asked that question before of what do you do? And a lot of times we go around the subject. We can be very complicated. This episode is going to be all about clear and concise messaging. So whenever we have a product to sell, or maybe we have a personal brand that we're trying to talk about, this episode is going to be specifically talking to that person that wants to be clear and concise so that everybody can understand their message. In this episode, we're going to talk about how we can be clear and concise in our messaging so that everybody can understand us. And then we're also going to talk about what exactly we should be talking about or what exactly we should have specifically on our website. I want to give credit to two books that I've recently read in the last 2 weeks. One is Marketing Made Simple by Donald Miller. And this book, the biggest thing I learned from this book was how to craft a one-liner, and we'll get into what that exactly is. And then another book that I read over the last 2 weeks was Building a Story Brand, also by Donald Miller. So a lot of things we're going to talk about in this podcast episode is directly related from those two books. And I highly recommend them if you're somebody that's interested in clarifying your message and understanding how to market more effectively. I would check out those two books by Donald Miller, Building a Story Brand and Marketing Made Simple. All right, so let's dive in. The very first book was Marketing Made Simple, and the biggest takeaway was the one-liner. What exactly is a one-liner? It's usually one sentence, but it could be multiple sentences, and it briefly describes what you do and what you're all about, and it's supposed to be very easy so that everyone can understand. Now, if somebody were to ask me what I do, my typical response may be, well, I'm an engineer at a manufacturing company. Or if I ask one of my friends what they do, maybe their response is, I work at a company that sells shoes. Something like that. It gives a very brief overview of what you do, but it's very high level. Or maybe you ask somebody what they do and they say, well, I got a manufacturing degree at the University of Dayton, and right now I work on automobiles and work in aerospace applications, and we design certain jet engines. Something like that, and it gets super complicated. So there's a 3-part framework that you can use to give a very brief one-liner of what you do. And it starts with the problem, and then it goes to the solution, and then the transformation. So PST, problem, solution, transformation. For example, if you work at a company that sells shoe inserts, if somebody were to ask you what you do, instead of saying, we sell comfortable shoe inserts, instead of using that example, you want to start with the problem. For example, so many people are on their feet so long that they experience foot pain. Okay, what is the solution? We provide high quality and affordable shoe inserts. Okay, then the transformation, so that we will reduce or eliminate your pain within 3 days. So if we put that all together, a lot of people suffer from foot pain from being on their foot too long. So we provide high quality and affordable shoe insoles that will reduce or eliminate your pain within 3 days. Something like that, where you start with the problem, you get to the solution, and then the transformation that you're going to provide. It's a lot better than just saying that you work at a company that helps with comfortable shoe inserts. Another powerful example is relating to a dentist office. If people say, what do you do? Well, we clean teeth. Okay, but what makes you unique? What makes you stand out from the crowd? Instead, you could use this 3-part framework to frame it like this. The problem: most parents get stressed when they think about taking their child to the dentist. At our company, our fun and welcoming office puts kids at ease, so they aren't afraid and their parents actually enjoy their dentist visit. And that's the same framework. The problem: most parents get stressed when they think about taking their child to the dentist. The solution: at our company, our fun and welcoming office puts our kids at ease. And then the transformation: so they aren't afraid and their parents actually enjoy their dentist visit. And I learned all this in that book that I previously mentioned. And the author of that book was Donald Miller. So on his website at storybrand.com, he brands himself and their company all about helping people clarify their message so that it's not confusing, it's not convoluted. And his example that he uses at storybrand.com is most business leaders struggle to talk about what they do. At StoryBrand, we created a communication framework that helps people clarify their message so their business starts growing again. So I encourage everybody to think, even if you work a corporate job right now, or maybe you own your own business, what is a powerful one-liner that you could use when somebody asks you what you do? Start with the problem, go to the solution, and then tell them the transformation. If you can do those three things, chances are they will understand what you do, and it'll be very simple and concise. Now that we've discussed the importance of a one-liner, the question becomes, if we have a brand, if we have a business, what other messaging do we do? I feel like the one-liner is the foundation of what you can speak to, but there's also so many different categories that you want to discuss on your website or in your brand. So the second book that I really enjoyed was Building a Story Brand, and that book was all about the brand script. And the brand script is a 7-part framework that was listed in the book, and it talks about the customer journey. So if you're going to sell a product, you want to understand the journey that your customer is going to go on in order to buy it. For example, if I'm going to Apple and I'm buying an iPhone, first, Apple knows their customer base very well. So they know that a wide range of people are coming in for different things, for AirPods, for iPhones, for MacBooks. But they also know the problem that their customers have and what their products do to make it better, to fix that problem. This book talked about the 7-part framework that you can think through that'll help you understand the customer so that you can sell them something. And it goes like this. The first thing is the customer has a problem, meets a guide who gives them a plan, calls them to action, helps them avoid failure, and ends in a success. Those 7 things. So the very first thing, a customer. Whenever you're selling something, you want to know who your customer is. You want to know your customer's goals, their ambitions, and you also want to understand what your dream customer avatar is. For example, a lot of companies, what they'll do is they'll get very specific and say, our dream customer actually lives in Ohio on a ranch and they love animals, something like that. And once you understand your customer, then the next step is understanding their problem. So what are their different pain points? What are their struggles? If you know what they're struggling with and you know what their goals and ambitions are, then that leads to number 3, which is they meet a guide. And in the customer's journey, you are the guide. The person that's selling the product is the guide in this scenario. And when you are the guide, you have to show them why you're qualified to sell them a certain product. And in the book, it talks about showing authority and empathy. First, authority. What makes you qualified? What have you gone through in order to get where you're at that makes you the ideal person to solve this problem? And also showing empathy, understanding that you know what the customer's been through. You've been in their footsteps. You understand them. And the more you can understand them and empathize with them, the more willing that they're going to want you to be their guide. And then the next thing is the plan. So after they know that you're the guide, what is the plan to do business with you? Do they have to sign up for something? Do they have to request a free call to go over a certain gym membership? Do you want them to go on a certain website? What is that step-by-step process that they can do business with you? And then after you give them the plan, you call them to action. For example, you encourage them to do something. You raise necessity. You give them the next step that they need to do in order to go through this customer journey. And then after the call to action, the next thing is that helps them avoid failure. So what are you going to do as the guide to help that customer avoid failure? A good thing to do here is show your previous failures so that you're qualified. And then after you show how you're going to prevent them from failure, you show them the success, which is the last step that ends in a success. So what is the transformation? What is the success? What is the result that your customer is going to get after they do business with you? And what's very important about this brand script, the 7 things: the customer, the problem, meeting a guide, giving them a plan, calling them to action, helping them avoid failure, and helping them end in a success. Those 7 things is all you need to do, all you need to understand, and that's what you want to tailor all your website messaging around. That's what you want to tailor all your conversations around, because if you can do those 7 things, that covers all your bases in order to acquire a new customer. And after I read these 2 books and really understood the power of a one-liner and also the brand script, what I'm doing is I'm trying to craft my messaging directly around the one-liner as the foundation, and then building those 7 steps to understand who I'm trying to target and then eventually what I'm going to sell. So it's a good learning experience just to go through the motions, even if you don't have something to sell. Because if you can understand how to craft your messaging around those 7 parts in the framework, then once you have something to sell, you'll already be ahead of the 8 ball. And then to summarize what we've talked about, I enjoyed the 2 books, Building a Story Brand and also Marketing Made Simple by Donald Miller. And we talked about the importance of a one-liner, going through the problem and then the solution and then the transformation. And then we talked about the brand script, which talks about the customer who has a problem, who meets a guide, who gives them a plan, who calls them to action, who helps them avoid failure, and eventually ends in a success. And if you're able to follow this and craft your messaging around the one-liner and around the brand script, then you're going to be super easy to understand, and you'll be taking the best advice from Donald Miller, who's a very well-qualified author. So thank you guys for listening, and we will be back with another episode shortly.